Greetings. I am Nicole Everett, the host of Conversations with Nicole. And today we have a special conversation, a conversation around early childhood education. The movie No Small Matters is kind of the lead into this conversation, but we have an awesome panel that will be coming before you to have this community conversation and talk more specifically about the Children's Services Council, which is on our ballot for this election. Here in Leon County, early voting starts today. It is Monday, October 19th, 2020. So, this is an important topic that we want to cover. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panel. But before I do that, I do want you to share your comments and questions in the chat. This is an interactive live. We want to hear from you and, have a community conversation. So, joining us today is Miss Talithia the Greater Bond Neighborhood Association president and Title One Leon County Title One Advisory Board chair. Welcome, Talithia.
Hey, Nicole. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for being here. All right, and up next is the Leon County School Board Member District 3, Mr. Daryl Jones, my classmate.
Hello, Nicole. Thank you for having us on Conversations with Nicole.
My absolute pleasure.
Hey, and I want to go Fort Braden Frontiersmen and Pineview Jaguars.
You know what? He's got to represent District 3. I love it. Love it. Love it.
School.
Yes, yes. All right. Also joining us today is the lovely Miss Shonda Knight from Whole Child Leon. She actually is the board chair. Welcome, Miss Shonda.
Thank you, Nicole. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Awesome, awesome. We also have Mr. Pastor Derek D. McGee Sr. from, oh gosh, what's the name of your church, Derek?
Bible-based church. It's okay. Bible-based church. Thanks for letting me be on. I appreciate it.
No, my absolute pleasure. Derek plays an important role in this discussion because he has been involved in this Children's Services Council journey for a little while now. So we're going to have him talk about the role that he's played thus far. And then last but absolutely not least is Miss Rita Brown from Brownsville Prep founder. Welcome, Miss Brown.
Hey, how are y'all doing? I just had a little technical challenge right there, but Brownsville Preparatory Institute is happy to be in this conversation today.
Awesome, awesome. So glad to have you all. Again, we want to, I'm going to be facilitating this conversation, but this is truly a community discussion. So let's dive in. So the movie No Small Matters explores the most overlooked and underestimated and powerful force for progress in America today, and that is early childhood education. It lays out the overwhelming evidence for the importance of the first 5 years and reveals how our failure to act on that evidence has resulted in an everyday crisis for American families, and Leon County is a part of that. So, I just kind of want to hear from you all. What are your thoughts and feelings about the movie, and what how has that evoked the need for a children's service council? Anyone?
Well, I'll begin. Yeah, I'll begin. It was really a really very good. It was a very good movie. I had previously seen a lot of the scenes in it, and with that said, it's important for us as a community to recognize the value of a child having self-esteem and feeling good about themselves. The movie showed us how, without a child even knowing, without anybody ever even teaching that child to not appreciate themselves, how it can naturally occur, and what we have to do to ensure that children do not see themselves in the negative and see themselves in the positive.
Yeah.
I
Shonda?
agree with Mrs. Brown. I think that for those of us who've really been engaged in this early childhood discussion, it really affirmed some of the things that we know, that the science doesn't lie. Those early years are so crucial to the development of a child's brain that impact the entire rest of their lives. Those first 3 years, there was one example they gave during the film that a child who is born in a low-income family is exposed to 30 million fewer words than other children out there. And so it just goes to show us that some kids in our community right here in Leon County, off the bat, are set up for failure. And it's incumbent upon us as a community to take responsibility for that and then act upon it. So I think it's a film that everyone should see, because there's some real data in there, tangible information that will really enlighten a lot of people about why we need to take the actions we need to take in this community.
Absolutely.
I watched it again for like the third time because you always find new nuggets in no small matter each time you watch it. And what stood out this time to me as I watched it again is the stories of the parents having to choose whether or not to work or to stay home with their kids, and that child care being more than their mortgage, right? And that shouldn't be a choice that we have to decide between child care and paying other bills or becoming homeless. And that's really important. Another piece that they pointed out was that a parent may choose a child care center, but the percentage, I think, I can't remember the exact number, was so low that that center would be quality, right? So someone can watch your children and while you go to work, but is it quality learning? Because that's the important key when talking about this, that quality early learning is gonna open up those opportunities and provide those, give those children a head start in life.
And here's the reality. I mean, when you watch it, it is disheartening, but appreciated. Is it heartening because the facts that we know are now in front of everybody else's face. These are things that we witness every single day. Talitha makes a good point. We know of at least a person, if not people, who happen to choose between, child care for their child or working. And there are parents making decisions that they don't go to work today, they lose out on that day's pay, and that day's pay affect their child's educational system. But also it's appreciated because it's putting it right in front of everybody's face. And Shonda makes a really good point. Those first 3 years are so critical. Children are such sponges at that age, and it's so critical. You can imagine a child 30 million words less than another child. That's major. That means that child is, for the rest of their life, always trying to catch up. They're feeling disenfranchised for the rest of their lives. And when that hope is taken from them, their future looks different because they don't have a hope to believe things can get better for them. And so the no small matter, the title by itself ought to be what resounds in our faces is this is not a small matter. And this is something that we all, whether it's clergy, community advocates, businesses, need to really focus ourselves in on, because this is a major impact in all facets of life.
Absolutely. So the film covered a lot of ground, from lack of affordable childcare to toxic stress to educators' wages. Are there any, what specifically, I guess, issues wise do you all believe are most challenging here in Tallahassee, Leon County?
Well, if I may chime in, Nicole.
Sure.
What all of my colleagues have described here are challenges that this is not our first, these children are not the first generation to deal with these same challenges.
Mm-hmm.
These challenges, regrettably, and this is that difficult thing that no one wants to talk about. These types of challenges have persisted for generations.
Yes.
And so when we talk about issues of cyclical and generational poverty, oftentimes people may be blindly unaware that they are perpetuating the same hardships or disabling activity that place them where they may very well be.
Mhm.
And let me be very clear, all parents love their children.
Yes.
There's something in the background, but all parents love their children and they want the best for their children. The beauty of what we're proposing now is that we're trying to mitigate how the current generation's income no longer has to be a factor in in repairing what this the most recent generation has to encounter. And that's what makes this important. Everybody on this phone call, everyone who's watching us, have seen headlines about poverty and 32304. But
Mhm.
if we want to be, we have opportunity now as this voting population, as this voting generation, to make a choice that ends that or certainly affects it in a very important and compelling and impactful way.
Okay. You said it. You have said it. So, how do you think Tallahassee compares to early education nationally?
I'm gonna let Miss Brown get that.
Hold on, Ms. Brown. Hold on. All right, there you go. How do
Okay,
you
great.
think Tallahassee compares nationally?
Okay, wonderful. And I had to learn how to mute my phones in the office. So the most important thing that we have to understand here is, of course, that birth to three is an important place, and it's an important place in terms of the amount of words a child hears. If there's not spoken language in your household, and you're watching things that don't elicit language, then there's a deficit. Once the children now enter into some type of an educational format, so often we feel like the quality centers that Talithia had mentioned are not available to our children. And we again have to expand on why are there not quote unquote quality places in our community? And there's a financial answer that's attached to that as well, as opposed to just hearing that, places in our community don't have quality care. I don't know a center that operates that does not want a quality environment. But if they cannot charge what the other centers that are providing what we consider quality care, then they can't hire who they need to hire. Children can't access the things that they need to access. But getting back to children being sponges and being able to absorb all of the things that any other child who has the opportunity to absorb has been something that we have seen very greatly. We are in the Frenchtown area. We have children that come from all over Tallahassee. Some of the children have parents that do very well for themselves in life. But the one thing that I have now recognized for education is it does not matter what your parent does. It does not matter where you come from. It is all about access. And if we provide that same level field
Mm.
for children in our community, I don't care if their parent is not helping at home. I have watched how parents who do not help at home, children can grow just as greatly if it's happening here.
Mm.
And I think that that's the thing that we miss. Now, if that parent was helping at home, could that child do more? Absolutely. But if we can provide it on site, then that child will be able to grow. We're a country of immigrants. People came to this country, sent their children to public schools, and did not speak a lick of English, but those children learned and became the doctors and lawyers and engineers and everything that we have seen in our society. How did that occur when those children walked in the classrooms without the English language?
Mm.
It's because it happened in the classroom. It happened because there were teachers in the classroom that were able to deliver that kind of education, as long as you had the parental support to make sure that education was valued.
But Miss Brown makes a very important point,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I want to go back to your original question about quality. Miss Brown will verify for you that because we do not provide the types of accountability standards in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
Florida is ranked 48th in quality of early learning. That's out of 50 states.
Ooh,
We're
wow.
ranked 48th.
Wow.
So, and modestly put, there are regrettably in the early learning industry in our local economy, Miss Rita Brown is an exception and not the rule, because far too many of our families are taking advantage of child early learning centers that do not bring the same cultural curriculum, the same level of standards for the professionals who are employed by her agency. And so regrettably, we got a lot of folks who are going to early learning centers that are just babysitting the kids.
Yeah.
They're keeping them safe, they're keeping them fed. So that's why when we talk about the Children's Services Council, they want to provide the type of investment in early learning centers across our community, such that when a child comes to kindergarten at my Pine View or at my Fort Braden that I'm wearing, right? That when those kids come to any one of those schools in their local community, they will all have an equal level of preparation. Now, Mrs. Brown is going to still exceed any standards that we would impose, but at least we know that our children will come to us prepared. They will have had the type of developmental play that helps them to approach kindergarten with the great opportunity that it provides in our public schools. But regrettably, without quality standards that come down from the state or from our local community, we don't have that. And the Children's Services Council will repair that, because they realize that if we make that purposeful investment of our tax dollars in early learning, which, by the way, is not supervised, right, by our public school system. Let me be clear about that. We get them in kindergarten. We want our community to make an investment in them before they come to us in our public schools.
And I think the operative word there is investment, because either way, we're going to pay for this, and that's a big part of the conversation, Children's Services Council and the funding for that. But we're going to make this investment now, or on the other side, we're going to pay for $400 million prisons, because the research is clear. Children who drop out of school or are not at reading level, they end up in these types of situations. And we look at our crime rate, which is always a big conversation in our community, the crime rate. Well, all of this has an impact. It starts at infancy. And if we don't make these investments now, it's going to be very detrimental on the other end. So we just have to make that choice.
Oh, yeah. So it's so good. So right, Shonda. One of the lines in the documentary says early childhood investment in early childhood education is criminal justice reform. And I was clapping because I missed that before, right? So as we're entering this conversation about the CSD and all the things that can actually be done for our children, if we were to make this investment into our community. Right now in Title I schools, our kids are only 26. I think the highest percentage I've seen was about 32% of our Title I schools where children are entering ready to learn. So when we're talking about this investment, we're talking about the $30 million the 30 million word gap. We're talking about the opportunity gap, which leads to a academic achievement gap. All of these things we can make this a small investment so that these children are getting exactly what they need. They need entering the schools ready to learn, and then exiting, like we said, criminal justice reform, economic stability. All of this is tied to investment in children early on. And I think we have a great opportunity here to actually turn the tide.
So I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
I would be remiss if I did not say that the level of pay in early childhood is disrespectful to the quality that you expect. Okay, it's and that's the only word that I can use. It's disrespectful for the quality you want and the amount that we are able to pay based on the monies that centers receive. Hiring the people or even encouraging your existing staff. I hire people who have no experience at all. I bring them in and I personally train them up. They get the requirements that the government requires, but what the government requires for them is not enough to do the work. Yeah. And then by the time we pay them substandard pay rates and expect them to do what a Leon County teacher who gets paid does, we're asking for more than we're giving. And it's unfair to rate the centers or even rate the quality of the staff when they've got to go and work 2 and 3 jobs to make one salary. So as we talk about this whole thing about quality early education, if you can pay your staff a living wage and then say, based on that, you are now required to do X, Y, and Z, people want to keep their good job. They don't care much about not keeping the job that's paying them the same amount that Walmart does.
Mm-hmm. Great point.
Yeah, and great point, Mrs. Brown. And thinking back to the actual documentary, No Small Matter, and the young lady they used as an example in there who was an early education teacher. She had to work a second job to just barely make ends meet, and eventually had to leave her primary job as an early educator to get a degree to go and make more money. And losing those quality individuals who are laser focused and have the passion, because some things you just can't teach, but to have that passion and the dedication to give to those children, and it's falling through the cracks because we are not making those investments is really crucial.
It is.
Well, may I also add to that? That's why this initiative is so very important. We're not waiting on persons outside of our community to talk about the future of our children. We could continue to make that argument, regrettably, ad nauseum at the state level, to the governor's mansion or to the legislature, right? What we here now have opportunity is to take hold of what I believe is our own destiny. We're saying that the children whose names and faces we may not know, but are still our neighbors, matter to us. And so here now, when you harness the goodwill of our community, who, when we talk about how does this roll out, what is our plan, we will be harnessing the goodwill and the intellect and the compassion and the integrity of our local community to be able to respond to the things that Mrs. Brown perceives. Here now, imagine when we talk about creating new industry standards in terms of compensation, readiness, teacher preparedness, right? When we as a local community, we don't wait for folks outside of our town to make that decision for us, for what we value as important for our neighbors and for our children that we would teach. We take on that responsibility right here with resources that we have identified for our community. That's what makes the Children's Services Council so compelling.
So let's dive in. I mean, we've been talking Children's Services Council without really talking about exactly what it is. So who would like to take the lead on that?
I'm turning my camera on.
You turn
I'll happily jump in. So let's kind of talk some history. The Children's Services Council is a phrase, an organization, an independent special district that's created by statute. And I think that's very important to put out there at the outset. Section 125.901 of the Florida statutes actually creates a CSC. So this is something that is governed by law that enables communities to be able to do this. I think that's also very, very important. And then it lays out what has to be done for a CSC. And that county government is important, but that county government is not the only voice in this. The electorate actually has what I would say the loudest and most powerful voice in all of this, because it requires it to be put on a ballot. Let's go a little further than that. The statute also lays out the amount of members that will be on a CSC. And so the statute says 10 members. 5 of those 10 members are identified in statute as to who they will be. Superintendent of schools, a school board member, a county commissioner, a senior executive from the DCF, and then you have the senior judge over juvenile justice in the court system. Those are your 5 identified in statute. Then the remaining 5 are appointments by the governor. But let me hit this because you're hearing this a lot out there by those who are not in favor. The governor does not have the authority to do anything that the statute does not allow him to be able to do. The statute says that the governor has to appoint the remaining 5 from a list of 15 names sent to him by the county commission. Upon receiving those names, he had 45 days to make those appointments. And so for anyone who's concerned about accountability, concerned about the governor being able to usurp the electorate and be able to do his own thing, he can't go outside of the statute. But I would implore any and all persons who have a concern about that to simply make sure they submit their names to the county commission to be considered. Because the fact of the matter is that the voice of the CSC will come from grassroots and will remain loud in grassroots. And so we have to be careful. Let me also say that a CSC does not take away the authority of the county and or city commission from doing things to help out children programs. I think that's very, very important. And so this CSC we're talking about is not trying to ignore city and county government ability to do anything. What we're saying is that we're tired of waiting for you to do what you have the authority to already do. I think that's very, very important for us to remember. So again, it's 10 members. The statute lays it out. The statute does not empower the governor to go against the statute. Everything is laid out in the statute the way it's supposed to play itself out. A little further than that is that it also requires that the CSC at 12 years from establishment to go through a reenactment process, a reauthorization process. And so if the electorate realize this is not working, they have the authority at the polls to say, we don't want this, let's do away with this. Now, anybody who says that it's easier said than done, we see things every election season. We see candidates who won office with a lot of promises and don't win re-election because it's insulting to assume that a person who is voting will not vote what he or she desires to vote for. And so a CSC, again, is an independent body. And I think that's so very, very important. Section 125.901 of the Florida statutes is so important to read. It's about 6 pages, but it's important because for anyone who is hearing things that leaving them suspicious, the statute lays out how this is governed. There's about 9 other counties in our state that actually have a CSC that have actually taken their time to go through this, work it out. Alachua County actually is the most recent county to have a CSC. And again, you know, that's Gainesville, that's the Gators. We don't want to give them much credit or kudos because they're not Tallahassee. Having said that, the fact of the matter is you're seeing this happen. And here is why. And Daryl Jones said it best. It's because we are allowing our voices and our reigns to be able to say we want to have a voice and a control of what we do for our children. And what I think is so important to remember is this, that the monies that are raised in Leon County through a CSC remain in Leon County. And I think that's the key point we continue to forget is that monies that are raised in our county stay in our county. So we're able to use our money for our children in our county. And I think that's important for us to understand. So nobody outside of our county has the power to dictate what we do in our county, but we have the right to be able to say how we want the money to be utilized and put forth. And I am, my last point, I am by nature conservative when it comes to ideology, right? But as a Black person, Black people, we are conservative when it comes to my finances. We've all had to balance checkbooks and make sure that we do right by our funding. And so none of us in here are advocating for the mishandling of money. None of us are trying to throw money into an empty or a hole in a pocket. And no, that's not what we're doing. What we're saying is based on our context, we're seeing children who are disenfranchised because of a lack of opportunity. I sat on the planning committee for the CSC. I've heard from great social service agencies who are doing great work. Here's what they all said when they came to report. No matter how much work they're doing, that we're still lacking when it comes to resources. The resources don't meet the need. This is not ignoring the work that they're doing, but they're realizing is the need is greater. Now factor in COVID. If we had a great need before COVID, COVID has made it now worse because now you have parents who went from dual income, single income to no income at times. You have parents now, their kids at home with limited opportunity or access. These are realities. 23 out of 100 children in Leon County are living in poverty right now today. And I will simply say this, you can't unknow once you know. Once you know this is happening, you have to want to do something about it. And I commend county commission, I commend city commission, I commend anybody who runs for office But as a pastor of a church on the south side of Tallahassee, I can no longer wait on government to do what we as a people have the power to do through our democratic process, which is to vote and make something happen. Never give a preacher a chance to talk. You take over.
Well, look here. Deacons don't do much better, Pastor McGee.
Amen.
But let me tell you what I think is also critical about what you've described, Reverend, and that is here now, through this process, right? We have already set in the 18 months, and let me pause to just acknowledge what has been your substantial contribution as a part of this. You were a part of a citizen committee that convened itself over 18 months to do the research, to hear from the voices in our community. You heard from experts who were talking about what the impact was. Y'all were able to compress and combine all of that to set forth a three-legged set of priorities for our community. It was the health of our children, the academic preparedness of our children, and the safety of our children.
Correct.
Then you also initially had provided us with a blueprint that explains to us that this process by which we distribute the monies that are made available to the Children's Services Council, this goes back to accountability, that the persons who make application for that money, it's not about it's not about creating new jobs. It's about creating best practices that we can then be able to measure. That's where the accountability comes in. We want them to bring their best and most innovative solutions to solving any one of the three of those problems. And each year we would hold those persons who are awarded the money, hold them accountable to show us how they have moved the needle in improving any one of those three areas: the preparedness of our children, the health of our children, and the safety of our children.
Correct.
So here now we hold our neighbors whose innovation we will now, and inspiration, intellect that we will now fund. We're now also hold them accountable to show us how they've improved things. And I think that is critical.
It is critical, Daryl. One of the things that I think that we're also forgetting about, there's 15 days to the election. And in order to even get this in the conversation, we need to be talking about the voting part of this. You know, voting yes on the Children's Services Council is going to be vital. There are so many other things that as we move forward will have to be worked out, will have to be, moved around and seeing how it will work. But the first thing that has to happen is we have to vote yes, because if we don't vote yes, then guess what? It's not even a conversation. That's number one. Number two, let us also remember that this is not just early childhood. That is my passion. And if we can solve that problem, I think we can solve a whole lot of other problems. But the CSC is also going to address programs, be able to pay for programs that address teens in our community, that address the LGBT community, programs that will affect and help them within our community. There are programs that people will be able to pull forward that will work on STEM and STEAM to uplift all of the children. Children don't only mean early childhood. Children are children until they walk out of the Leon County school system or whatever school system they walk out of. So there's step one. Step one is vote and vote yes. Step two, call your friends and tell your friends about it, because here's another really, really sucky part about this. The ballot is over-worded. And if you don't turn the ballot over and look for the top right-hand corner of that ballot to even vote, then we're not even having this conversation. And it doesn't just, we say our community and we're all Black people on here, but our community is a greater community than just Black people on this screen. There are a bunch of different communities. There are Hispanic communities. There are white communities in this town that are suffering just like we are and who need this program in order to even have a chance to bring those things forward for the communities that they live in as well.
So all great points. Thank you both, Daryl and Ms. Brown, for especially bringing to light about where this is on the ballot and how wordy it can be. So, folks need to be on the lookout for it. But I want to circle back. Pastor McGee talked about money. We have not talked about like where this money is coming from.
Yeah.
I've read recently that there are 9 Florida counties that have special taxing districts for children's services.
Yep.
And I just want somebody to speak to where this money is coming from so we could be real clear about that.
Let me jump on this one because this is, and I want to because if you don't educate people on this, it becomes a scare tactic. Mm-hmm. So it's a half a meal. And let me break that down, a half a meal.
$500,000?
No, half a meal. No, not half a million. So
let's get that straight.
If you have a home and that home has a homestead exemption on it, you're looking at about $25 additional annually on your tax bill.
Okay.
If you have no homestead exemption on that home, it's about $50 additional. That's real numbers, right? Anything you're hearing outside of that is wordplay to create fear. This is again why I'm trying to challenge people to read the statute. The statute lays all of this out. And so this CSC will not have the authority to create numbers out of the sky.
Yeah.
Now, a half a meal, $25 additional if you have a homestead exemption on your home, additional $50 if you don't. What it equates to is about $6 to $8 million annually of new revenue dollars to be used for the CSC. Again, this is all generated from that half a meal. Now, why is this important? Because I want to make sure it's very clear that no one, the planning committee that I served on, when you vote on November the 3rd, the 10-member committee that will be established upon this upon this passing, no one has the authority to grab a number out of the sky and make it the number. The statute lays out how this works, how this governs. Daryl mentioned about the 3 areas of focus. Why that's important is every county that currently has a CSC, they were all tasked with identifying what's going to be the focus of that area. Why is that? Because you want to see a return on your investment. Mm-hmm. You want to be able to measure what you're going after. Some areas have picked teenage pregnancy. Some have pick violence, whatever it may be. We've identified those things, but that's what it is. It's $25 additional if you have a homestead exemption on your home, $50 additional if you don't have a homestead exemption, between $6 and $8 million additional revenue to be utilized for this purpose. Now, I want to also add in a fact here. This passed on November the 3rd. I'm talking all forward thinking. Passed on November the 3rd. The first order of business is establishing the foundation. So that's putting the committee together with the names submitted to the governor. Even when that's done, you got to be able to hire someone, get everything in place. Remember this now, nothing survives with a shaky foundation.
That's right.
And so as a person who believes in the power of voting and a person who's supporting this, I'm still going to hold accountable those who make up the 10. I'm still going to be expecting those things to take place. And so I think this is important for people to understand. Now, some of the opponents are those who are just anti-new taxes. I understand it. I get it. And for the most part, I am that guy on a lot of things. Mm-hmm. When it comes to children, I go from a dilemma to a decision. My dilemma is I don't really like new taxes. I don't like to tax people out of their living. But my decision is children should not be politicized. At some point, you got to realize that these children need to have somebody arguing on their behalf. And so these are real dollars that could be put in place to help out. But all of this, Nicole, is laid out in statute. And so if we're hearing anything from anyone, you can, if it's not in the statute, it's made up to create fear. Let me go a little further and make this point that I am not in favor of any initiative that's arguing for defunding police or defunding law enforcement, because we don't have to go that route if we endorse this route here. And as a sheriff has said in many settings, if we don't do any investment on the front end, we're going to do it on the back end. Even Shonda said that on this very video here. This is important to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that our prisons and our jails are not struggling with capacity. There are people being in there, but we could actually help these generations think about life beyond their block. Let me give you a quick example, and I'll pass it on. Where I pastor, I have met young kids, and I love the area that I pastor. We've chosen to be here. I've met kids who have never been outside of a 3-block radius. Now, what does that mean? I met one young boy a few years ago who has never even been to the Governor Square Mall, and he's born and raised in this community. So if they haven't seen the mall, college is a foregone conclusion to these kids. It don't even make sense to think about college. What they know is their local grocery store is not Winn-Dixie or Publix. It's a local gas station with 1 aisle of healthy food. They're living in a food desert. They're struggling to make ends meet. Their mom is working multiple jobs. You got some kids having help raise the other kid. You got kids who are going to school, not eating their lunch, take their food home and feed their younger sibling. These are the realities. These are the realities. And Mrs. Brown makes a good point. This is not just the Black community. This is our community, our city, our town. And there are Democrats and Republicans on both sides of this. There's some Republicans and Democrats who are for it and who are against it. My argument is very simple. We should not politicize how we serve our children. We should not pull them into that battle because they lose in the end. They will always lose in the end. This is not about red or blue, Democrat or Republican. This is about what can we do. Here's a Baptist point to serve the present age. And these children deserve the chance to be able to get beyond 3 blocks. Beyond 3 blocks. This boy has a right to know that there is life outside of the county line. And it's a scary thing, but a reality. There are some kids who have never been outside. They're literally a 3rd generation of in the same community. So all they know is what's around them. And that's scary to think about, but that's some people's reality. And so that's what this is. This is not, I don't want to say break the bank of people's households, everybody's finances, but it's affordable, it's doable, and the investment is worth it. And I think that's the most important piece.
You're preaching today, Pastor.
Where's the collection plate?
Good preaching.
Jones, I need you to pass the collection. Yes, pass the collection plate, please.
Well, and I wanted to add to what Pastor McGee is saying, and because you look at so many of the children in our communities who are in this struggle, right? And the potential is there. You know, the potential is so there. And I know you know this, Mrs. Brown, but you talk about the whole Baptist point, Pastor McGee. There's a Walter Hawkins song that says, "Thank you, Lord, for all you've done for me." And he said, I could have been no food, no clothes.
Yes.
All of us could have been in this situation had it not been for somebody reaching, grabbing, giving us the resources we need and putting us in a place to succeed. And so we owe it to ourselves to invest in these children. You don't know what capabilities they have until you give them the tools they need to succeed. I could take you over to the Leon County Detention Facility right now and show you some real talent. And thankful to the reentry positions that Sheriff McNeil has put into place, they are getting some enforcement to help cultivate those skills so they don't end back up in the detention facility. And we help to bring down that recidivism rate. But nobody's coming to save us. This is our opportunity. I can't tell you how many town hall meetings I've been to, how many summits I've been to. This is our opportunity to go to the ballot and make a difference that is going to have an immediate impact on our community and our future.
There's another fear tactic that they're using. And this other fear tactic that they're using is they're trying to make it appear as if this is some get-rich-quick scheme for persons through this Children's Services Council. And like Pastor McGee, I too am a fiscal conservative. And as a person who's been in the industry, right, for years in human services, one of the things that I have constantly argued about are what we call welfare pimps. Folks who use our demographics to then get rich off of. Well, that's not what this is about. This is about hiring the best persons to provide leadership so that we can hold our taxpayer dollars accountable.
That's right.
This is about hiring persons who are going to be able to manage the appropriate dispensation of that which we will have collected. They will be required to be good stewards of our dollars, because the level of oversight for this is far more strenuous, far more rigid, far more arduous than what we would ordinarily see, because we've created this brand new taxable authority. So there'll be no fluff. The lion's share of the money cannot be committed to administrative costs. So we don't have that to worry about in our community, because there's already the types of protocols and paradigms in place to ensure that we are going to be good stewards of our tax dollars. So I want to dismiss that falsehood. That's fake news. And I can assure you, I can speak for, as I talk to our public, I can tell you, I speak for everybody on here. You don't got more people who are more watchdog than the 5 voices that we have brought together. So let's just be very clear about that. This is done. We will ensure that that is accountable. That's not a problem for us. We will provide appropriate compensation for the persons who will be stewards of our taxpayer dollars. But there'll be no welfare pimping here.
Daryl, I'm so glad you say that, because as a person who runs a business where if my parents don't pay, I don't live. My staff doesn't get paid. My bills don't get paid. One of my biggest concerns about social welfare programs is that they usually do become very administratively heavy, and very actually implementing is where the lesser of the money goes. So before I even decided that this is a conversation I'd be willing to have in a positive way, it was one of my stringent requirements, because I work every day for every dime I get, that this council will have to handle the same level of accountability that I have to put on myself each and every day as a self-employed person.
And the fact that the whole process is so public, right? You don't only have the watchful eye of the 10-person committee, you have the entire community, right? I'm gonna say what I'm thinking, is that we have an opportunity here to do something that's wonderful. And we come and I've watched us really dismantle some really powerful things that we can do in the community by nitpicking at the small stuff. And I've been so adamant to push this because I've seen it work in other places. I'm from Miami, who has one of the youngest children's services councils, but I'm working with organizations down there who are benefiting from the Children's Trust. The leveraging of the funds is outlandish, how you can leverage money once you've invested in yourself. What other people will begin to invest in you? So we're talking about $8 million, which is not a lot of money. So let me help some people who $8 million, you've never seen $1 million, so it sounds really, really big. But it costs $1 million to lay less than a mile of sidewalk. Okay, so when we want to think about what $8 million can do, $8 million is a lot of money to some who haven't seen it, but it is little for what we're facing with the needs in our community and the things that our children need. But the leveraging of the money is priceless, because you got state, federal, all of these different things that you can actually pull in. You think about the impact of collaboration that can happen with organizations that can come together to really provide impact. Because if we learn how to spend our money and not just throw it up in the air, we will begin to see the greater impact. So that's the part that I don't know why that's being missed. I heard someone say, and you said it real good, Pastor McGee, it's a small investment, $25, $50. Someone said that if a property owner passes that particular cost off to a renter or something like that, they were making it that it could easily slide someone into poverty. And I may not have gave the best political answer about it, but I've seen us go to lunch and spend $25, right? Like, we went to lunch and spent $25 and not thought about it, right? And gave a tip on top of that. So if we think about that, we are investing in just eating sandwiches for a couple days or for that week, to have our investment ready for our children, to have long-term impacts. I am an early childhood advocate, so I am excited to see what can happen in early childhood, because I'm seeing firsthand schools, what children are facing. I can imagine what teachers are walking into right now. Have the kids with the COVID slide, 6 months. We know what happens on the 3-month summer slide. I can't imagine what's happened on the 6-month summer COVID slide. And you got an additional piece to that COVID slide, because although school went back and some children are at digital academy, those kids aren't logging in. The bottom tier children aren't having anybody who's making sure the games are happening. The parents are at work. We got all of these things that are now compounding in our community, right? So we're talking about failing schools and food insecurity and juvenile delinquency and community violence. These things are going to be exacerbated in a couple years. We're going to see what if we fail to invest in our children now. If we fail and we tell them not right now, I promise you, we will see the fruits of this non-investment, and those are going to be rotten fruit. And I know we don't want that.
That's exactly right.
Nicole, you're on mute.
I see it now. My bad. So yeah, a whole lot has been said. There was even a question earlier around, if this doesn't pass, what type of grassroots efforts will take place in the community? Any thoughts around that?
I can.
Yeah. So let me.
I can speak to the question of that, because here's the one thing that we have to be really, really clear on. There's a whole lot of good-hearted people in our community that spend a lot of their own personal time serving the community for no dollars, for no pay. They are there. They have been there. They will continue to be there. But rather than ask that question, Nicole, I would want to say, what will happen if we don't vote yes? Because what will happen is we'll do what we've continued to do. We'll continue to be the best we can be with no funding. And then people will continue to talk about what people don't do and how things should be. And here we have an opportunity to make things, I'm not going to say 100% perfect. I'm not going to say 3 years from now, we're not going to have an opinion on whatever did occur and how it did occur. But I'm saying that we hold ourselves accountable to this, if we hold the council accountable to this, if we hold the community accountable to go out and vote and put people in offices who will, in 4 years after this board is gone, if they feel they haven't done a great job, put people in that will see that other people are in office to make the right thing happen, then guess what? Either you're going to sit on the bench or you're going to get off the bench and become a part of this conversation. You know, it's one thing to ask, what is someone else going to do? And I'm going to ask this big question. What are you going to do, Leon County?
Let me jump on that. That's a great question, Mrs. Brown. And this is something I want to say to all those who are watching now, who may watch this. November 3rd is a major day, but as Nicole mentioned at the outset, you know, early voting began today. And we hear so much locally, statewide, and nationally about the top of the ballot between the presidential races.
That's right.
But let me say this to everybody. This is so important for people to understand, because along with pastoring, also work political process. National politics irritate us, but local politics impact us.
That's right.
And why is that important? Because if we spend so much time worrying about who's going to occupy the White House and ignore what's going on in our local communities, the things locally are what impact us the most. City and county commission decisions have a greater impact on our livelihood than anything that come out of DC. And why is that important? Because if you focus only on the first thing at the top of that ballot, if you don't keep going down to judicial and going down and turning to the other side, those are the things that really impact everyday living for us. So Nicole asked a question about that. I agree with Mrs. Brown. Those who have been working, those who have been grinding, those who have been laboring will continue to do so. They will continue to do so, and I have no doubt about it. But I will also want us to say, Talithia mentioned about Miami. When Miami went after their CSC, they were unsuccessful originally. And they will tell you, talking about that, the amount of work it took to bring this back up again. They ultimately were successful, but it was successful because of bipartisanship support. You have people like Dave Lawrence, a Democrat, and Governor Jeb Bush, who's no longer governor, Governor Jeb Bush, a Republican, working together for the Miami Trust. Why? Because they realize what's greater than my ideology are children's lives. And so I don't want to think about what happens if it doesn't pass, because I know people are going to still work hard. But I also want us to realize the impact in that regard. And again, I said it earlier, I want to say it again. This does not take away from what city commission and county commission can be doing or could have been doing. The fact of the matter is, as of today, it has not been done. And so I implore them to do their part in this. Absolutely implore them. Do not take it away from them at all. But why does that have to be the only thing that can be done? Why can't that be done and this be done and many other things be done? Because remember what I said earlier now, from the social service agency providers, they've said out of their mouths before the CSC planning committee that the resources don't match the need. That means that the need is greater than the resources. On their best day, they're still coming up short because the resources are limited. Mm-hmm. So when you look at it from that standpoint, that is the reality. This is not at any point insulting the great work that's being done. It's all of them saying, I come to work every day knowing I'm going to still come up short based on resources, not based on service, not based on attitude, not based on desire to impact. It's the resources are limited. My last point before we have to close it, I want to say, and I want to be very clear on this. No one a part of this conversation right now is financially benefiting from supporting this. All right. So I am not a local pastor who is getting his pockets padded financially for being supportive. I make my own decision. Factually, I joined the planning committee as someone who had concerns about this, got asked to be a part of it as a skeptic. I spent 18 months of my life walking through all this, asking questions, reading material, interviewing social service providers. And I realized that there were things in there that the reality of what would need to be done could be impacted. I made a decision based on my research, based on what I knew. So it's important for us to understand that I am vocally supportive. If you know anything about me, I don't jump behind every bandwagon. Actually, I avoid the bandwagons for most part, because usually if it sounds too good, it's going to be too good. When you do your own research, though, and you realize that these programs are working in other places, think about some of our other organizations. You got the local chambers, you got United Way, et cetera, et cetera. They're supporters of this from the business community standpoint because it's proven in other areas. And so I think that's important for us to understand. My last point again, everybody, is remember that national irritates the local impacts you. We cannot become so blinded by Biden and Trump. And that's important that we forget about locally what's happening in our community. And I really want to implore us to do our research, read. The last item on your ballot is the CSC. You have two choices. You have a yes or a no. I hope you vote yes. Thank you, Nicole.
You're welcome.
That's a very important part that you make on that. You know, we have to vote yes for the children. It's the back of the ballot, the top right-hand column. And, you know, I too have not ever been a wide vocal proponent of anything that creates, you know, expenditures and things of that nature. We don't have a choice here. And it's going to take community collaboration. I teach 3-year-olds how to read. Guess what? I'm going to need to partner with someone who wants to help teach 3-year-olds how to read in this community because it benefits everyone.
Yeah. It's crazy that Pastor McGee has to say that we're not being paid. There's no money to pay us. That's why we're trying to get money for kids. There's no money to pay us, you know. But when you see things happen and you're on the other side of advocacy, it took 3 years to advocate for all-day VPK. The school board passed it, but what we see is that the service need of the children who will qualify for all-day VPK is not enough funding, right? How do we get children in school? We got this concept floating around about a pop-up preschool to do this 2-gen model to bring early childhood education to the hands of the parents so the children enter school ready. We're already being creative as grassroots leaders with $0, right? Trying to find the free material. What curriculum is free? Who can give us books? We're doing that, and we're still seeing that it's not enough. And so when we see that, you know, I'm not understanding, you know, we Christian. Well, I'm a Christian. You know, the Bible says if your son asks you for a piece of bread, would you give him a stone, right? The children are asking and begging to have a great quality of life, to be able to compete on the same level as their peers. And we have an opportunity to make a small yearly investment of 25 or 50 plus dollars as a community to leverage $8 million. It behooves us to move and to vote yes for the Children's Services Council, because our kids can't vote. It's up to us to do it.
That's right.
And to add to what Talithia is saying, not only are we not profiting from this venture, but we are investing. We have been investing for a long time, which is why we now feel compelled to be mouthpieces. We've seen it. We've seen the poverty. We've seen the potential. And if we can just close this gap, the investment is so worth the payoff. But we've got to take action now. We've got to be involved in the process at every level so that we can make Leon County a better place to live, work, and play.
Absolutely. I also like to add to that, Sean, that we've seen the arrest in the, I think that's a huge contributing factor as well. So, as has been mentioned about the criminal justice system and, criminal reform, one of the best types of criminal reform is putting those resources into early childhood education. Well, I was hoping we were going to get a final comment from Deacon Jones, but it looks like he is in transition. So we are going to, get some comments from him later. But I absolutely have to thank each of you for serving on this awesome panel and providing us some great insight on your perspective and what the real is about this issue. Okay, so I'm gonna try to get Deacon Jones on here for just a moment. All right, Mr. Jones, in closing, what do you have to say?
Well, let me say, I'm reminded what my grandfather used to say. And he admonished me when I came to college. He told me that as a young man, I could either be a thermostat or a thermometer. Thermometer.
Oh, that was there. We got it.
Thermometers merely measure temperature.
Uh-huh.
Thermostat set it.
All
Here
right.
now, as a community with our Children's Services Council, we have the opportunity to either remain a thermometer, where we find ourselves responding to what are the outcomes because of our failure to invest in our children, or we can be thermostat and set the temperature on excellence for our children by guaranteeing their preparedness, their safety, and their good health. And I quite frankly would rather be a thermostat that sets temperature rather than a thermometer that merely measures.
All right.
And share this information. Share this information. Let people know. Most people don't even know that this is a conversation. If you don't talk to everyone you know, if you don't make a Facebook post, go to the Our Children First Facebook page, grab their materials, send it to your friends, let people know that this is available. And if you want more information, you can go to www.ourkidsfirstleon.com, because if you don't educate yourself and help educate the people around you, this doesn't happen. We need you.
So, Brett Ingram, I see your question around doing something outside of the classroom, outside of the voting for yes. So we'll circle back and address that in the comments. I actually want to also thank the viewers for their comments and questions today. This has been quite insightful and helpful. And while I'm here to facilitate the conversation, I just, again, wanted you all to get the real in terms of what the actual money was or is, and where it's going and who's going to have the oversight for it. So as Ms. Brown and others have said, please share this conversation. Please keep this conversation going. Please go vote. Again, voting started today. Early voting started today. It goes through, I believe, November 1st. And then election day is on the 3rd of November, Tuesday, November 3rd. So please, please, please go vote. Go vote, go vote, go vote. Again, thank you to the panel. I will be doing another community conversation like this on Wednesday, next Wednesday, the 28th, I believe, at 6 p.m. So there'll be more information coming forth as it relates to this. Another group that wants to discuss this very important issue. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Y'all be good, be great.
Wait a minute.
Thank you, Nicole.
Who you bringing on here? Who you bringing on here next week?
Yeah, that was a tease. You got to give us a little bit more.
You're gonna have to ask your sister Talithia. You're gonna have to ask your sister Talithia about that. I'm just a facilitator.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you didn't have, Okay, sounds good, sister.
Nicole, thank you for everything that you do to inform our community and keep us in the knowledge with real facts. So we appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anybody that wants to help, go to Our Leon First, and you go to our Kids First, Leon.com, and let them know that you're out there. Everyone has a place. Everyone can do something. Just go to Our Kids First, Leon.com, and say, I want to help. And I guarantee you, someone's going to put you to work.
All right. Very good. All right. Y'all have a great one. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for inviting us.